Hello everybody and welcome to a blind commentary of Jormungand. I think that's how you say it because that's kind of like how that. Yeah. Anyways, some base information. Do I know anything about the show? Nope. I have not even read the synopsis. I know nothing. I know nothing about the show, so this should be fairly interesting. It has been a while since I've done commentaries. Frankly, too long. So I wonder how this is going to go. So of course, feedback will be appreciated once again. Since this is always an ever evolving process. Just you know, give me your opinions, and I'll see how I can improve and tweak the formula in any way, shape, or form. So I know I'm being very self-conscious about the fact that I haven't done this in a while. So yeah, let's get on with the show proper. Now I can already say something because World Serpent Jormungand. That's um I can't exactly remember in the I think it's Norse mythology. I'm not exactly sure where the name Jormungand comes from. I might be very wrong with that. It's like maybe Nordic, Celtic even. I'm not exactly sure. I know I have heard of that previously, of course, because I have been, of course, maybe not studying, but I have read upon the literature of this area's mythology. Actually, pretty wide range of mythologies, but that has been a while ago, so I can't exactly remember. But that's already an interesting little point there. Devouring everything. That is already quite an intriguing premise. Now, what I actually kind of had there was a pretty interesting sound design already there in work, and that was very much having to do with a kind of a mixed culture of uh, mixed cultural influences, which kind of would, you know, signify about the consumption and consolidation of the cultures of the world, which possibly could be a pretty good foreshadowing, considering that it had heavy influences from both, Western worlds, southern world, southern continents like specifically Africa, and also from, of course, Asian countries. So a little bit. I would actually say that there was a pretty predominant theming in the actual that the vocal tracks were taking up the major part, and that was actually very sounded like it would have been very heavily influenced by African countries, but that area is outside of my field of expertise, so I don't exactly know. Anyway, into the opening. Now that, of course, lyrics are often made to be conveying a lot of meaning, so naturally there would be a lot that I could actually infer from that, but I of course I'm gonna have to, since I haven't even read the synopsis. I don't even really know the genre. I haven't read the titles or anything. I only know the name. I haven't read the titles, nor the genre markings or anything like that. I've only heard that it's a show worth watching, so it's hard to make any decisions about the show, but I can make some inferences already. Like, it might have that there's like a very heavy. Of course, there's going to be like violence and all that kind of stuff. That's very apparent considering that there's a kind of a militaristic theming already being shown with some weaponry and something like that, and especially the detail on those bullets kind of signifies that there's going to be some marksmanship involved. But more importantly, the lyrics and the melody especially conveyed that there will be a very heavy theming of conflict and well, conflict, but not. I don't mean conflict as in battles or anything like that. That's guaranteed, but more in an internal struggle of allegiances and loyalties. Possibly, considering that the melody was somewhat dissonant and it's kind of hard to search for the words since it's been a while. The melody was a little bit like wavering between two different tracks, and it was in constant struggle and contest with the backing track, which kind of creates a very interesting tonal difference between the backing track and the melody track, because that means that they are like competing for attention, but they are also like in dissonance, but not like horribly so, of course, because it did sound pretty good. So I don't know. This is just some. Maybe I'm overanalyzing. I don't know. I'm not a musical expert, so I don't know anything. Let's continue. This is gonna be interesting, because obviously we know that two main characters, they were very prominent features, of course, in the title card you can see over there, but also in the opening they were the very central focus. It doesn't take a genius to figure out the two most important characters in the show, but the fact that they are kind of already putting weight on or emphasizing the fact that there's like a group of soldiers or a team or something like that she has, that's kind of an interesting, because that would mean that they are the fact that they don't get like, not only do they not have any like really defining features or anything, like, the typical thing with anime is that if it's a main character, they have something special, they are more detailed and more designed, usually speaking, of course. But if they are a side character, then they, don't have a lot of details to them. But it's going to be interesting to see whether this team is going to be more like an important team, like every character has importance, at least until they die, maybe. Or whether they are like, just a throwaway team that's just like, therefore basically fluff material. I don't know. Anyway, continue. That is actually kind of an interesting thing that they are emphasizing these kind of. I'm gonna after this episode I might read the bio, but perhaps not, I don't know. Or I might at the very least look at the tags for the show, because if there's something like, there might be some tags that might give off like a lot of information, considering if there's like horror or seinen or mystery or something like that. That's gonna give a huge that's gonna give a lot of information, but blind commentary and all that. Anyways, there's an interesting focus on the fact that Jonah is not only is indifferent to weapons, but also has resigned himself to the fact that he's just kind of forced to use them to survive in this manner. That's a interesting little detail that kind of, I wonder how that's definitely there's no way that it won't play an important part, considering how much they are emphasizing it. So I wonder what the underlying message will be ultimately at the end of the show, because of course there could be some very natural anti-militaristic themes, because that's just very normal for people to associate with hatred of weaponry. But there could be a lot of different messages that could be transferred to this medium, such as that sometimes you have to do things that you just like have to do, like that you hate, so that you survive, or maybe survival of fittest, or coming to grips with the current state of the world, or stuff like that. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of exactly underlying theme and message the show will have. So this is going to be an interesting little fact, because I do have of course my own opinions about PMCs and like just arms stealing and just armies and pacifism and all that fun stuff. But I don't know. Well, that might be a good thing to talk about later on. This is actually kind of an interesting little thing that's going on. Like, I know I'm being a bit pedantic because I'm just talking about sound design, but that's kind of what I've been doing lately. So there's something interesting about the backing track currently, because that's very much just and I know, sorry if anybody realizes, but my terminology is definitely going to be very much off, because I just don't know the correct terminology. Anyway, the background track very much is just featuring basically just rhythm in it, which just like enforced by, you know, drums and just like basic bass riffs and guitar, and that like it's just upholding a rhythm, which is meaning that there is some tension here, but it's definitely nothing serious. It just means that there is still danger actively here going on, which is kind of an interesting thing, that it is keeping the tempo of the story still up, but it's just calm enough for us to know, or to communicate that it's calm enough to communicate that this is nothing yet, but it's also still keeping it up so that there's like a vague sense of feeling that there is still danger here. So that's an interesting little feature there.
急がないと前方にいるココが挟み撃ちになってしまいます。そのつもりだろうよ。で、バンにぴったりくっつけてもらいます。マジ
Ah.
ココ、左車線。
Now that's also fun little detail there, that they are actually featuring more people. So I wonder if the fact that they were not featured in the opening that heavily is mostly just because they are, even if they are important people, they are important characters to the story, they are not quite as important as, you know, our main two characters. So because it would really seem that they are still all designed, because in that brief flash that we saw of each of them, they all still had designated features to them that were easily distinguishable, but they are still, they might be important later on. So at least it appears that they are going to have some importance to the story, and they're not just going to be, you know, backdrop settings. I'm not exactly sure that the javelins work like that. I don't. Whatever. Nah, I don't. Yeah, I don't know jack shit about weaponry. There was actually. I'm gonna go back a little bit, because there was something a little interesting here. Because I'm gonna. Come on. No, not here. Yeah. This is something interesting, because even though they are this little fist bump that they do, is that's a little important thing, that even though they are it really does mean that they are like, even Jonah is happy about the victory, but he is not exactly still ecstatic, as you can see from his facial features. Like, even though he is like, he is clearly like, yay, we did it. It's more like a mission complete, other than, but of course not, the mission is far from over, but like the first part of the mission is over, instead of just being like okay, so the point I'm trying to get over is, it's pretty obvious how much Jonah is communicating the fact that he is not exactly ecstatic about murder. So that's, oh my god, it's already almost 25 minutes. Anyway, so it's interesting that how much they are emphasizing that Jonah just is maybe not disgusted by having to kill, more that he's grown accustomed and very indifferent to it. So it's an interesting feature there. So anyway, continue. Man, I'm just not that. Okay, I know, I'm stammering. I like that wake up animation a lot. That was fast and succinct and just all around pretty fantastic. I really like that. So yeah, it was pretty freaking. I don't know. I just really liked how that, mostly that eye opening and the quick draw. That was cool. It was still a controlled draw, naturally. So there's one thing that I wonder about. There's one thing that I'm just wondering about, and that is whether he is holding the, how he is holding the gun, like on the, whether he has the finger on the trigger all immediately, or I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to go through this, not exactly frame by frame, but you know, later on when I'm editing the video. So.
おはよう。おはよう。噂は聞いてたし、さっきから詳細も届くんだけど、ちょっと嫌な相手だな。
This is something interesting because there's like a lot of banter going on between the characters, and I like it because it kind of does establish a bit of a more casual tone between them, as in they are experienced in this and they have been doing it for long, but it's more like, you know, black humor, gallows humor type of stuff, that they are like joking around because that's kind of relaxing in the face of possible death. So like in this kind of dangerous situation, it's interesting because it does establish also a lot of their friendship, which is like they are maybe not friendship, but more like their camaraderie. So, and something about this is kind of that they have like very obvious trust and faith in Coco, which is pretty peculiar considering that we were shown that she is a bit loose, to say the least. But she's apparently there's probably something about her that we don't know yet. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what exactly that is.
この業界嫌なやつばかりだけど。おいレム、撃ちまおうか。やめとけ。
Well, this is gonna be pretty. This is well, she's certainly being ruthless and extra careful. So that's, and pretty sly. That's pretty cool and badass. It's gonna be interesting to see how she develops her own philosophy of being an arms dealer for world peace. That sounds really interesting. I don't know. That was actually kind of an interesting, like, it's nothing unusual that a group calls themselves family, so, but it's always a pretty okay sign because that does make it, you know, that does create a good sense of camaraderie in the group, so, yeah. Okay. Oh man, that is okay. I know I stopped immediately before the ending credits, but that imagery has a lot of meaning to it, because I mean, yeah, there's a lot to break down here, but obviously. There's of course, once again we have the central Coco and Jonah in the reflection, but it's importantly a reflection of a bullet casing, so that is pretty meaningful, because that does, I mean, it's not like these things, I know I'm just spelling out obvious things, so, but obviously that does mean that there's like, their path is filled with violence, so, but it also does mean, and there's a lot to break here, but to leave a short, this just establish. I could go into more detail about their clothing and their positions and how they are, technically speaking, facing one another, even though they are not exactly looking at one another in that kind of way, but, and their positions and their sizes, like, for example, Coco is higher and bigger in the reflection, but she is still looking at Jonah. So, and Jonah is just like slightly gazing at her, but also keeping his field of view like centrally focused. Not focused, I mean pretty wide, so he isn't concentrating only on her, which is kind of an important feature that he had. That is that he's very aware of. He's aware of every situation, so it's interesting. And also, there's like this. The color palette is also kind of an interesting little choice here. So, yeah, I don't know. this is immediately quite a striking little end screen here. Although I know that the brown palette that is used for end screens is pretty common, but you know, still, it is somewhat more suitable or very fitting for, you know, militaristic purposes and such. So, or you know, well, specifically for militaristic purposes, but also for generally just like more violent theming and more, maybe not bittersweet, but it does have a lot of meaning. I sorry I can't go more into this detail, but it's because I've only recently gotten into, you know, reading about color theory. So and I don't exactly have the know-how right now. So that ending riff is pretty interesting. That's a pretty funny one. So okay, I guess we'll just jump into this then. So yeah, just some general thoughts about the show so far. So well, it is interesting. I do have mixed feelings about child soldiers, but that is obviously going to be an important theme in the show. So I'm looking forward to seeing how exactly it is handled, because it clearly does have importance. And more importantly, there is a very internally conflicting feelings about violence in the show, and that is clearly presented, and that is something that's pretty cool in the way that it's brought to the surface. And one actually kind of an interesting little thing that I noticed during the show was that it doesn't have a huge emphasis on violence, or more specifically, it isn't like glorifying violence and reveling in it. So it's definitely not like, it doesn't have the message of that violence is fun and great and murder is okay and stuff like that. Obviously not. That's just, you know, hyperbole. But it's interesting, and I'm fairly interested to see how the show continues. So yeah. Now, what else can I say about the show already? So I actually really like the character designs for Coco and Jonah. More interestingly enough, they have a very different character design to the other people that we've seen so far in the show, who are like the main two characters obviously are very differently designed to everybody else. Like they have very obviously, their eyebrows and eyelashes are pretty heavily pronounced, and that's an interesting little choice there, because that does emphasize their, like, the fact that they have very heavily um defined facial features, especially around their eyes, really does have a lot of like weight to it, because that kind of draws attention to their minuscule movements and emotions in their mannerisms and all that. So that is an interesting little feature there. More specifically, we see the lack of emotion on Jonah, which is fairly interesting. So, and it's not that he's completely emotionless, obviously not. We actually saw a really nice flash of that in the fact when the Stinger shot at that Stinger missile blew up that car, and that rabbit pretty funnily flew onto the back of their on the top of their car, and he kind of gave a little smirk and laugh there. So that is interesting way to show that he still has emotions and that. So he's not just completely emotionless child soldier. It's pretty interesting. And the quick mention of that, vengeance list and such. It's a really good build-up episode and a really good introduction episode because it does show like the central themes and motives and the characters and all that. So yeah, it also does have some really good character build-up already. So yeah, I would say that it's a very efficient and a very good opening episode. So yeah, yeah, I like it. So I would have a lot more to say, but I would rather wait until the show kind of develops further and I can make um, more informed opinions and maybe look up some information. But also one thing I should do is I did notice that I should brush up on my terminology quite a bit because I noticed that I'm using wrong words. But it has been a while, so. Anyways, I don't have much else to say. I'm looking forward to the show, so it's fairly interesting. And actually, one more thing about Jonah specifically, I kind of like that he has that little scar on his cheek. Or under his eye rather. So, well, it's on his cheek anyways. But yeah, I like those kinds of little imperfections there because that kind of gives more character. So it's a small thing, but I like it. So I like those kind of little. I like some little blemishes. So yeah. Anyways, uh, that's it for the episode. Like I said, give feedback. That'll help me improve the commentary and such. It'll also get me back in tip-top shape. So yeah. For now, I thank you all very much for watching. I'll hope to see you all in the future. Have a great day and stay awesome. Ganmu out. Thank you all very much for watching.